It's odd that the very same people who are saying we need to consider tactical nukes in order to preserve the territorial integrity of the sovereign nation, Ukraine, are saying it's totally okay for this one country to like take over other countries. I mean, there's a sense if you're fighting over Sinai or something, it's one thing, but like Lebanon?
So recently, Tucker Carlson shared the cold, hard truth when it comes to the Greater Israel Project, the idea that Israel's borders will expand to include more parts of the Middle East than they do now. This while Israel blatantly says that it will annex Gaza officially if no hostage deal is released. This is in a context of a discussion with John Mearsheimer. These two are excellent at analyzing geopolitical events, so let's get their take on this. Please like the video and subscribe to the channel.
I'm sorry, I should have asked you this. Why do they want Gaza in the first place? It seems a lot of trouble killing all these people, committing, atrocities on camera. I mean, the press are barred, but we're still getting a lot of video out of the area. That's a big hit. Why would you be willing to go through all of that to get Gaza? Why do they want it?
Well, the Zionists from the beginning have wanted a greater Israel. And David Ben-Gurion wrote a piece in 1918. And David Ben-Gurion, of course, is the founding father of Israel.
Yes.
Wrote a piece in 1918. I don't think it's ever been published in English. It's just in Yiddish, where he describes what his goals are for a greater Israel, right? And it obviously includes Green Line Israel, Gaza, the West Bank. It includes parts of the East Bank. It includes parts of southern Syria. It includes parts of southern Lebanon. And it includes the Sinai Peninsula. Just think about that. That was Ben-Gurion's vision. And this was a vision that was shared by almost all the early Zionist leaders. And there are still many people in Israel who are in favor of a greater Israel.
Yeah, you can see they're pursuing this strategy, and they have for the last few decades. And as I'm speaking now, again, they're threatening to annex Gaza right now to try to actualize this dream of a greater Israel. They're expanding West Bank settlements in both Lebanon and Syria. Part of the reason why they wanted to support the overthrow of Assad on the side of Al-Qaeda, by the way, was to try to destabilize that nation and make it possible for them to lay claim to large sums of it. And we just see this thirst to bring Ben-Gurion's vision into fruition in successive administrations, all on the bankroll of the U.S., who is just supposed to join Israel in this endeavor and get into the wars that it wants us to get into in Iraq and Syria and, Yemen, to continue bombing them in March, and Libya. All disastrous affairs that have done nothing for the United States, but we're just, the bankroll. We're just the wallet here. And yeah, there's a lot of terrible politicians on the U.S. side that are supportive of this. I spare no wrath to them either. But there's no branch in the U.S. government that should be complicit with this madness, because it is exactly that.
They don't want a tiny Israel. The Israel that was created in 1948 is a tiny state.
Yes.
Even with Gaza and the West Bank, it's quite small. It's a postage stamp-like state, right? They want more territory, and they believe they have a historical right to that territory. Israel has never said, these are our final borders. What are Israel's final borders? They've never been articulated. And the reason is the Israelis don't want to say out loud. The early Zionists did not say out loud.
It's the same reason they don't want to say out loud that, hey, we have a secret nuclear weapons program, which, by the way, we still went to war with a power on the premise that it had a secret nuclear weapons program. But we won't admit it now, just like we won't admit that we want to expand our borders to include more parts of the Middle East. What would that bring in terms of the international opinion and an inspections regime in the case of nuclear weapons? They get special carve-outs for this, and the U.S. is behind all of it. The U.S. vetoes everything that would curtail this propensity in the UN Security Council, and I don't even think there should be a UN Security Council. America First mentality and sentiments drive me to believe that this is all fruitless in the first place. The U.S. shouldn't support Israel at all.
What their intentions were. David then Ben-Gurion didn't get up on a soapbox and say, we are going to create a greater Israel, and it's going to include southern Lebanon, southern Syria, the occupied territories, Green Line Israel, the Sinai, and so forth and so on.
It's just a little, irony isn't powerful enough a word. I can't think of one. It's odd that the very same people who are saying we need to consider tactical nukes in order to preserve the territorial integrity of the sovereign nation Ukraine, because national borders are sacrosanct, that's our sacred norms are violated when those borders are violated, are saying it's totally okay for this one country to take over other countries.
Yeah, and also the idea that the borders of Ukraine and Israel are so much more sacrosanct than the borders in the United States. Look, there's a lot of people that watch this might have different ideas on borders and immigration policy, but you have to point out the hypocrisy that is viewing the borders of Israel and Ukraine as more sacrosanct than U.S. borders during what many people consider a border crisis, when there's probably 30 to 40 million illegal aliens in the United States, but suddenly all of our money has to be diverted into the Middle East and Eastern Europe for these proxy wars and bankrolling genocide in the name of the U.S. taxpayer. I think that's nonsense.
But this gets back to my point to you.
Right?
I agree completely. We support Israel unconditionally, right? In other words, whatever Israel does, especially vis-a-vis the Palestinians, the United States backs them to the hilt. And the fact that they're changing borders. I look at what they're doing in Lebanon and Syria, and you would think that the United States would have a vested interest in trying to put pressure on the Israelis to stop causing murder and mayhem in Lebanon and in Syria. But we do hardly anything at all.
And those are real countries. Those are ancient countries and beautiful, beautiful countries with sophisticated, intelligent people, and the roots of Christianity are there. And it's not, in other words, there's a sense if you're fighting over Sinai or something, it's one thing, but Lebanon?
Yeah, these countries don't even enter into the equation. You don't even hear about this part of Israel's thirst for dominance in Greater Israel when it comes to the West Bank settlements and laying claim to parts of Syria and Lebanon. Almost all the news is directed to Gaza, and rightly so, but there are many dimensions to this that just kind of bolster the fact that this is madness, that it doesn't make sense for the U.S. to be involved in supporting this country when we derive no benefit from it. We only derive negatives from it. We get sucked into wars. We get debt piling up to the hilt to $37 trillion right now, and we just gave them $20 billion last year, and I think on track for that this year. It's just complete madness, especially when natural disasters grip the U.S. Again, there's going to be people watching this that have different ideas of what you think the best domestic policy remedies are, but I think many of us can agree that the worst and most warped priority is to send money that could be used domestically to the Middle East and to Eastern Europe, when, hey, we could have tax cuts or address those things in other ways. I'm not a big fan of the modern welfare state, that's for sure, but I would lose less sleep over it than if it was spent killing innocents in Gaza, that's for sure.
That's one of the great countries in the world. Syria, same thing, and they're being destroyed. I don't understand why people allow that to happen.
Well, let me explain to you what Israel's goal is here. First of all, Israel's goal is to create Lebensraum. That's what I was describing to you when I said what Ben-Gurion's vision was regarding borders.
Could you define the word?
Lebensraum means living room. You want a big country. You want lots of space for your people.
Yeah.
That's what Hitler wanted in the East. He talked about it as early as in Mein Kampf, where he talks about how the German people are entitled to Lebensraum, and that's the idea that Germany would expand into the East. And, he did bring that to fruition during the Third Reich, and the same concept remains when it comes to Israel. They want a greater Israel. This is kind of their version of manifest destiny, that Israel will grow. They have the divine right for it to grow, no matter who it impedes, who it kills, and who it displaces. That really is the mentality here.
Yes, strategic depth.
Strategic depth, yeah. And so that's one goal. The second goal that the Israelis have is they want to make sure that their neighbors are weak. And that means breaking them apart if you can, right? And keeping them broken. So the Israelis were thrilled that mainly the United States and the Turks broke apart Syria. One could argue that Syria was even broken before Assad fell. But the Israelis want Syria to be a fractured state. They want Lebanon to be a fractured state. What they want in Iran, we talk about the nuclear program, the nuclear enrichment program, and the argument is sometimes made that the principal goal, the only goal, is to go in and eliminate their nuclear capability.
That's a lie.
Well, it's just part of the story. You could call it a lie. What the Israelis want to do is they want to break Iran apart. They want to make it look like Syria, right?
This is exactly true. I think this is the best point Mearsheimer is making. All we heard when it came to the war in Iran was their nuclear capabilities, which, by the way, they didn't have a nuke. All the intelligence communities aligned on the fact that they didn't have a nuke. Tulsi Gabbard, in her annual threat summary to Congress, announced that they don't have a nuke, and there's no evidence they've even reconstituted that program. But in reality, he's right. Israel wants fractured nations, and ostensibly they're saying, hey, you should overthrow Assad in Syria, which the U.S. tried to do from the Obama period. It didn't finally happen until December of 2024. They said that you should do that because money is flowing through Syria that gets to Hezbollah, and that's the real threat. But he's right. They actually just wanted a fragmented Syria in the same way that they want a fragmented Iran and a fragmented Lebanon, so Israel can lay claim to parts of those territories. And this isn't a conspiracy theory. Again, you can read what Ben-Gurion said about that, what many successive generations of Zionists have said about that, and just look at how Israel's behaved. It's trying to expand the West Bank settlements right now, occupy more of those settlements. Right now, I think it's something like 66% of them is settled by the IDF, and to annex Gaza, which they're also talking about now. This doesn't enter into the zeitgeist of, modern political discourse for the most part outside of the independent media, but this is in play.
You want neighbors that are not powerful. You want them to be fractured. Jordan and Egypt, they have a different solution there. And what's happened is because those countries are economically backwards, the United States gives them huge amounts of economic aid.
I've noticed.
Yeah. And that's done for a purpose. And anytime the Egyptians...
And what's the purpose?
Because anytime the Egyptians or the Jordanians get uppity about Israel, the United States reminds them, you better behave yourself because we have huge economic leverage.
That's exactly right. And guess what? They don't use that same kind of economic leverage when it comes to aid to Israel. They don't say, Israel, if you continue this ethnic cleansing campaign in Gaza, we're going to withdraw your aid. But they do it to Israel's neighbors. They do it to Jordan and Egypt. I think Egypt, receives something like $1.8 billion a year from the U.S. A lot of people don't even talk about that, but that is right. He's totally right. That's used as leverage that, hey, you can't go to war with Israel. That's why the U.S. is giving them money, but they don't use that same kind of leverage against Israel, despite giving them last year something like, 12 times that amount.
Over you. You have to be friendly to Israel. So Jordan and Egypt never caused the Israelis any problem.
It sounds like our entire foreign policy, at least in the Western Hemisphere, is based on this one country.
Well, I would say in the Middle East.
Well, yeah.
In the Middle East, there is no question. People now call it West Asia, I believe. I call it the Middle East. In the Middle East, our policy is profoundly influenced by Israel.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. Tucker's right. Our foreign policy does revolve around Israel, especially in the Middle East, but there's also, some elements of that affects other wars. For instance, AIPAC is hugely supportive of funding the Ukrainians in the proxy war versus Russia. And, ostensibly they say it's for democracy, despite the fact that, hey, Zelensky has banned oppositional parties, isn't holding elections, citing a clause in the Constitution that allows him to remain in power as long as he says, there's a war in effect, and there is. But, he's outlawed rival political journalists, shut down Eastern Orthodox churches, expanded conscription mandates, imposed martial law in various regions throughout time in Ukraine. And this is still supposed to be for democracy, but really, the AIPAC and Israel lobby supports that to take eyes off of what it is that is his grand desire, and that is the Greater Israel Project, of which Gaza is only part of it. And there is a genocide in Gaza. They're trying to annex it right now, at least talking about that. We'll have to see if that comes to fruition, because, man, I don't know how more public opinion can turn against Israel, but if they annex Gaza and they show they're serious about this, I think that it's over. They're peeling off too much of the American right now. And yeah, a majority of Republicans still support Israel, I hate to say, but more and more are waking up to it. You have people like Tucker and Candace Owens and even Matt Walsh that works for the Daily Wire is saying, hey, this Israel first mentality, it doesn't make any sense. We should stop giving foreign aid to any country. And people asked Walsh, like, wow, does that mean Israel? He said, yeah, I didn't make any caveats there. So, yeah, you are seeing major people on the right really have doubts about this, question it. Tucker Carlson delivered a speech at Turning Point USA. That's Charlie Kirk's organization of Trump loyalists that are young, and they cheered on Tucker when he bashed Israel and the Israel first mentality and the fact that no one deserves to be called anti-Semitic if they happen to question this. It just makes them sane. And the people broke out in, clapping for that because, the tides are changing on this with younger people. So yeah, the Greater Israel Project is a disaster. The U.S. should stay far away from that. If Israel wants to do that, hey, have at it. That's something that I would oppose on a moral level, but on a political level, there's absolutely no justification for it whatsoever. We should withdraw all aid to Israel, bring home all of our troops from the Middle East, shut down all of those bases, stop giving funding to Israel's neighbors just so they don't go to war with Israel. I don't want to subsidize the security of other countries. And oftentimes, when it comes to Israel, it's not subsidizing security. It's subsidizing mayhem, madness, and murder. That's what the U.S. does in far too many cases. So, yeah, I'm largely with Mearsheimer here and Tucker, and I'm so glad that Mearsheimer brought up the fact that Israel's vision for these countries is not how they sell it in terms of the propaganda, and it's not how the neocons sell it either. Nuclear weapons, schmuclear weapons. They're the only country in the Middle East with a secret nuclear weapons program. They just want fractured states to take advantage of them and expand their own settlements in the name of Greater Israel. We've seen that pan out. What's happening in Gaza is a disaster. It's a starvation campaign. And there's no reason you should support anyone who doubled down on that, justifies it, makes excuses for it, and says, hey, Hamas has hostages. Well, great. Guess what would happen if criminals in the U.S. had school children hostages in a school? You wouldn't drop bombs on that building. That would not fly. I'm sorry, that excuse doesn't work. And neither does the whole Israel's just defending itself. That's baloney. No one believes that anymore. Even the people parroting that propaganda don't believe that anymore. They can be convincing in trying to show that they are, but I don't think in their hearts and souls many of them believe that. But let me know what you think. Let me know down below. Is Mearsheimer and Tucker Carlson right? Is the Greater Israel Project something that Americans need to be exposed more to and learn more about? Is there any benefit to U.S. aid to Israel? Because I sure don't see any. But let me know in the comments below. Like the video, subscribe to the channel. Also subscribe to Tucker. Really appreciated this interview. Mearsheimer is one of the greatest political analysts in the world in terms of foreign policy, as far as I see it. And please consider becoming a YouTube member. If you click the join button below, you'll help support the channel, which I will appreciate. And in return, I'll give you all of my videos to be viewed by you before they go live to the general public on YouTube. And until I see you guys next time, no more war, no more debt, no more inflation, and no more empire. Peace out, guys. Catch you in the next one.